It just kills us.
I thought that was a special greeting for me.
Hey, Debbie. I have one of everything to add to that.
It's pretty hard to write away.
Yeah.
Well, so he's got his hand on it. It's like, sleep on it.
There is nothing wrong with your television. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll things. Make it fluffy. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpen with clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
The great name. So you wanted to see it on that picture? Yeah. Is it on the? I told you to see it. Yeah. It's not my you know,
This is no. We'll get yourself up here. This is
I think it was that dancing you were doing.
Yeah,
Isn't it just like, just so nice to sit and listen and then go out and sit down.
Better camera this time?
They don't like this. Fix the 45 push this over here. Pretty soon, I'll wait till you guys.
Did you get a new camera? Or is it the same one?
That's the same one. We got a few. We got this one, we got this guy.
Seems a small one.
Yeah, that's a small one. Yeah, let's do pitchforks. This can be good. Did you have all? You have to separate the
We don't need a new gallery, Joe.
Okay, so that's all set up for that.
I think think it's there, but I don't know if it's good.
It's about as useful as a tin can thing. There's no circuit breaker. It's like having a car with the whole cash down in there. Really big car. Thanks for talking. Let's go. We're recording.
Hi, Noel.
Just 5-minute thing going on. I'll sit down and start getting next time to think about what I'm doing.
Pass the ball. Pass the
Oh, you're not doing okay, so
P-O-S-T, the cereals you like the most. The cereals made by Post take you to the secret mountain retreat of Captain Operating from its secret mountain headquarters on the planet Earth, Captain Video rallies men of goodwill and leads them against the forces of evil everywhere. As he rockets from planet to planet, let us follow the champion of justice, truth, and freedom throughout the universe. Stand by for and here's
ball.
Nobody
Okay, may I begin to bring the meeting to order, please, here. I'll ask for individuals to sit down. Good evening, and welcome to our Tuesday, March 4th, 2014 City Council meeting. And at this time, We have convened the meeting. We'll have a roll call, please, by our deputy city clerk tonight.
Councilmember Alfano?
Here.
Councilmember Patridge? Councilmember Kowalczyk?
Here.
Vice Mayor Fraser? Here. And Mayor Muller?
Here, thank you. We will do Pledge of Allegiance, please.
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending. Before we start the meeting, we have no proclamations and presentations, but I would like to state that we will be adjourning the meeting this evening for two of our community members that were with the greatest generation, our retired Fire Chief Larry Santoni, and also our local legend Kenny Ormondi, who were given so much of their time for the benefit of all of us in our community. So we will adjourn this evening in their memory. So at this time, we will move on to mayor's announcements and community activities. And I would ask the council if they have any advice, or any comments. I have a couple here quickly. Monday, March 10th, we've all received this wonderful scoping meeting that will be held at our new EOC meeting on Monday, March 10th, with the upcoming scoping meetings are part of the public participation process associated with CEQA and NEPA, and it will be with City of Half Moon Bay and Department of California Transportation. So that's Monday, March 10th from 7 to 9, and then Saturday, March 15th from 10 to noon. So thank you for that. And at this time, we will have a report out of closed session with our city attorney, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Muller, members of the City Council. The Council met this evening in closed session at 5 p.m. There were 3 topics on the closed session agenda. The first was real property negotiations. The parcels in question were the 225 South Cabrillo Highway and 2450 South Cabrillo Highway properties. Second item was a potential litigation item involving considering initiation of litigation. The third item was a public employment matter, and the position being discussed was the city manager. There was no reportable action.
Thank you, sir. And we will move on now to city council reports. I'll start with Councilmember Patridge, please.
Sure, I'll do that.
And for our deputy city clerk, with respect, it's Patridge. Thank you.
I attended the Transportation Authority meeting, and Don Horsley was sworn into office. And a resolution was given to past chair Carol Groom. There will be a call for bike and pedestrian projects. We approved the quarterly investment report in the 2001 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. And we received a very interesting and informative report on the Caltrain Modernization Corridor electrification. And we also approved the 2014 legislative plan. Attended Congestion Management and Environmental Quality Committee report. Heard a report on the express lanes. The executive directors from Santa Clara and Alameda counties presented their program on express lanes. Presently, they are using HOV lanes to convert some of the lanes into express lanes where people can pay to use the HOV lanes, it's a really interesting concept, and San Mateo County, we will be looking at it. However, presently we have a missing gap between Whipple Avenue to 3rd Avenue on Highway 101 that doesn't have HOV lanes. CCAG is looking at the development of alternative fuel readiness plan. We will be taking 2 years to develop a plan analyzing policies, incentives, and alternative vehicles. Received a report that a meeting was held with the city managers, mayors, public work directors, and county to discuss the stormwater funding initiative. Assembly Mullins will be carrying our bill. the county and cities need to seek funding since our present permit expires 2014. Attended the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee meeting. We approved an extension to San Carlos for the North-South Bike Improvement Grant on Old County Road. Received information on the Roadway Safety Solutions Team Project and also on the statewide Active Transportation Program. And I was elected vice chair of that committee, excuse me. Attended a special council meeting on the library, ethics training, citizens oversight committee meeting on Measure J, and attended a meeting to welcome Dante Hall. Attended the Council of Cities and heard a very informative presentation on infrastructure from the president of the California League of Cities, which I did bring back information we'll pass on to staff. Thanks.
Councilmember Walczak.
Thank you. A few things to report from my activities since the last meeting. Attended I think more than one SAM meeting, at least it felt like more than one sewer authority meeting, and focus on our, I guess, Alan and I have two big focuses with SAM right now. One is the recruitment of a new full-time general manager, and that is going well, and we hope to have some positive action to report soon. But also note that our interim general manager is just exceptional and has been providing tremendous support and expertise. So it's been smooth in between, and we're looking forward to hopefully having a full-time GM soon. The other thing we're focusing and paying a lot of attention to is the rates and the funds at SAM, and SAM being the sewer authority, and watching the flows pretty carefully. And there was a little uptick in previous months where the city's portion of the fees was a little odd, a little bit high, but it's proven to be an anomaly, so everything's back in line where we expect it. I forgot to report previously, I attended the State of the Valley, the State of Silicon Valley, an economic report on the conditions in Silicon Valley since our last meeting, and I actually have a handout I'll place in each of the council members and mayor and vice mayor's boxes. Basic conclusion is that if you don't already know it, it's a pretty hot market, and housing is challenged because of that, traffic is challenged because of that, the economy is good because of that, and that's the basic conclusion. But lots of excellent statistics in there that I think you'll find interesting. I'll pass those along. I also attended the special meeting on the library, and I also want to welcome Dante Hall to our crew, and I did not meet with Dante, but I will be this week. Thank you.
Councilman Alfano.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. On the 24th, we had our SAM meeting, and as Rick said, we're really focused on the SAM expenditures going forward, because at the end of the day, it really directly impacts our ratepayers' cost, and we just really feel like we've got to find a way to keep that in line. The 27th was Network at Night, and that was a really great evening. But a lot of the Chamber's Network at Nights they're okay. You go somewhere different, but you kind of see the same old people. This night, it's all about teachers. And every business person or whoever wants to give a teacher a $100 bill to go buy supplies or whatever they need, steps up, Charisse announces their name, and they pick a teacher's name from the hat. They picked out 66 teachers and ran out of money, and then everybody in the room started putting their money back together, and we were able to give $100 to the remaining 8 teachers. So I think at the end of the night, we had given over $7,000, and this is direct. This is a business person that steps up and hands a teacher $100. I don't want to call it Ocean Shorts now, Hazlitt Hardware. They also brought bundles of supplies for the teachers to take home in bags, and they offer the teachers huge discounts. If they have a project, they don't have to go over the hill. They can order what they need from Hazlitt and get it brought there and then purchase it at a big discount. So it's a great evening. Thanks to Charisse and all the people that put it together. On Friday morning, we had the business roundtable at It's Italia. We had a few people there. We have to get better attendance. There's some good topics, And this is a way for the people in town, the business people, to come and talk about what's on their mind and get some questions answered. Council of Cities in Belmont, very enlightening. The speaker was very good, thank God. And then Saturday night at the IDES Hall was the Hatch School Auction. And I don't know how much was raised, but I do know my daughter-in-law paid $1,500 for a parking space. And she wasn't the only one. They auctioned off 3 of them. And that was among probably 20 or 30 live auction items. And then there was a whole silent auction. The point of this is, it's so nice to see the community come together. And I think Mark Heath was the MC, and he called it the gap. So there's a lot of things schools can't afford. The PTO, the auctions help fill in the gap. It's a tremendous service they do. And then on Monday, I went to my GPAC meeting, and it was very interesting talking about the general plan. What are we looking to do? What kind of things do we want to upgrade? What kind of vision for the community, circulation, and all that. So I'm really glad that that whole process has started. And I know Naomi and I are very happy with the committee members. They represent the community, and I think we've got some really well-qualified people.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, John. I did attend the network at night that Alan spoke of, and it was really rewarding. At first, it grows every year, as this was the 4th year, and at first you saw so many teachers coming in. It was doubled the amount of last year, so you were just hoping there would be enough donors, and it definitely was. People did dig deep for that, and the teachers were just so grateful, because as you know, they contribute so much of their own money to the schools and to their classrooms, so they were all very happy. Also attended the Friends of the Library meeting, and the revenue each month just on book sales is getting to be close to $1,000 and over $1,000. And with your donations in the community, that's really helping to drive that, which in turn funds so many of the programs at the library. So because there are so many books that they've been gaining, we're going to have another book sale. Usually it's in the fall. We're going to have one on April 12th, Saturday. It'll just be the one day, not the 2 as we previously hold. So that's coming up. And also, was at the Seacrest School. Annually, the first grade classes, they create a Main Street with shoe boxes and things. It's all the things they see on Main Street, plus the different type of things they want. A lot of the kids want an aquarium on Main Street. So that was really fun, and Mayor Mueller joined me with that. And the kids get very excited because they get to tell you what they like about their store that they've created. And also, the speaker at Council of Cities in Belmont was Chris McKenzie, who's head of the State League of Council of Cities. And he did speak a lot about infrastructure, but mostly about economic development and how the state of California and businesses have to be smarter and do a lot of different ways to combat recession and come out of it. So that was enlightening, and the League of California Cities supports all the city within the states. And one message that I have to relay from a little Girl Scout, Taylor Duncan, she wants everyone to know that Girl Scout cookies are now available. They're going to be out and about around town, so please buy your cookies and Thin Mints. Thanks.
Thank you, Council. So you can see we don't just come to a meeting. We do a lot of other activities, and I'll share them with you in a moment, mine. But I want to lay some ground rules here this evening. We have a large audience. Number one, if you're interested in speaking, you have to fill out a speaker card before the agenda item is pulled. I will not accept any during the agenda item. Number two, you can public forum, you're only allowed to speak on non-agenda items. So I have to make that perfectly clear to all of you. So those are a couple little things we'll get started with. And I can tell you on February 14th, I also attended the Building Seacrest boxes of Main Street. It was very successful. And in the afternoon, for our Ventura Street and other avenues here, I did a personal walk on those streets of Ventura Street, Terrace Avenue, and Beach for future street repairs. I understand how you all feel, but we are working very hard to figure out a way, and we do have some potential funding that we as council members can all pull and fight for coming up here. And so I do have you in my my thoughts there for sure. February 18th, which is absolutely wonderful for all of us, I recommend it for all of you. We did 3 hours of ethics training, and it gets a little boring at times, but it's something that we as council members, elected officials do every year, and thanks to our city staff and legal team for putting it together. And we also had other members from other agencies attend too, so we thank them for coming in on that. February 20th, when you're mayor, you get these fundraiser things, and it's not pumpkin season, so it's kind of tough, but we go. So we had a fundraiser with the Oddfellows and Rebecca's upstairs of the old Oddfellows building for, believe it or not, for the continued fight on polio in the world. And there still is some polio issues out there. And the individuals cooked an amazing pasta dinner, and it was a huge, successful event there. And Microsoft founder contributed double the amount of money that they collected, so it was a good push forward there. 27th also, we attended the chamber and the local coastside teachers, and they were from Pescadero up throughout our whole coast, so it was really great. And Hasek Hardware did a wonderful job bringing as many supplies as they could there. And it's just, we're so fortunate, and we all know it, how generous not only business but individuals are to give of their time and their money on these type of events. And then on Friday, I had the privilege to meet with 2 of Senator Dianne Feinstein's top aides, facilitated by Rich Gordon. And the senator's #1 priority, which we can all understand, is security in America. She chairs that committee. And also, #2 this year in particular, she's very concerned about the drought issue in the San Joaquin Valley and for agriculture and economic issues. And #3, we talked a lot about infrastructure, and we talked a lot about bridges in America. And if you notice, President Obama is moving forward with repairing the thousands of bridges that are in need of repair in America. So those were good meetings we had. I have an upcoming meeting tomorrow morning with Supervisor Malia Cohn of San Francisco, who represents Bayview Hunters Point District, and I'm bringing her seeds for the garden programs on Bayview Hunters Point for a little get-together up there. So we've been pretty active there, and we have a lot more things to do, and we have one more item on the agenda that I'm going to ask the council to shift. I'd like to move the first item of business, number 12, first. Our San Mateo County representative is here. He needs to be going off to a meeting as soon as possible, so it should be a very brief presentation with our Peninsula Humane Society, if that's okay with the council. Agreed?
Before consent?
No, after consent. I'm sorry, to clarify that. So, we have a full pile of papers here that we're shuffling through, so let me get back to my agenda here. And we will keep moving forward. Next item on the agenda.
I have some updates for you, Mayor.
Okay.
The first one is very exciting. I wanted to formally introduce several staff members. One you know, one people are just getting to know unless they have very good memories from many years ago. So first I would like to formally introduce our Deputy City Manager, Alex Kajikian. Alex has actually been with the city about 16 months and has been serving in a variety of capacities. And Alex is now stepping up to work actually almost exclusively on the City Council strategic plan and all of the different items in that, including the library project. So very excited to be able to support Alex in the career development, and he's been doing such great work. I know he's going to continue in that. So formally congratulating and thanking him. Also, I wanted to introduce our new Community Development Director. Dante Hall has joined the city, and Dante, if you could wave, please. Dante comes with us with decades of experience in local government, in the community development arena, and we're very excited to have him. It's actually a return to Half Moon Bay, and so he already has some local knowledge and is going to be ensuring the council's direct direction is implemented to make sure that we have a fully integrated and functioning permitting process, as well as dealing with all of the different high-profile projects that come through there. So I also give a big welcome to Dante Hall. The next item, Mayor has already covered the scoping meetings that we're doing on the bridge project as part of the mandatory environmental review process. And it's just the first step in what will be a minimum of a one-year environmental review process. And then the next meeting that we wanted to make sure folks were aware of is March 11th. Our Housing Element Forum meeting is going to be happening to get input on our housing element. This is a part of your general plan, but there are very prescriptive timelines that the state requires, and particular updates. So we have a certified housing element from the state, which is fantastic, and we are now doing the next mandated cycle for updating. So we hope the community will come to that and be involved in the process.
Thank you. And at this time, I have public forum cards here. A large group of them. So first will be Carol Martin, please, from Ventura Street. And is that correct? Yes. Yes, at the mic, please. And push the little green button.
Well, thank you for hearing me, City Council. I was encouraged to hear that you're even considering us for repaving. I wrote this at work, so I will just read from my paper. My name is Carol Martin. I live on Ventura Street, and I was at the City Council meeting in October, and I submitted photos of Ventura Street to all of you at that time, if you may remember. I also submitted 4 pages of a petition requesting Ventura Street to be given priority status for repaving. It's been 5 months, and I haven't heard from the City of Half Moon Bay as to when or even if there is a plan for this to happen, but it sounds like it's being considered at least. In the meantime, our potholes are becoming deeper. We are the only block in this neighborhood with 25 tax-paying homes who have a street which has not received any needed repairs in years. We all agree on a few things. Number 1, it's in poor condition. Number 2, some logic was used to bypass any repairs in August when most of Half Moon Bay was done. Now it's time to move forward with a plan to repave this part of Half Moon Bay's infrastructure and maintain what is done. It's unfortunate this meeting can't be a dialogue because we are unaware of the city's plans to repave Ventura, and I think that you've been discussing it, and I think our mayor has come to our street to see it. I would like to suggest more open communication besides the Half Moon Bay Review to share any information you have concerning this future project. And I left my email on the blue card, and I can be the spokesperson for this street. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next will be, I don't think we need any applause this evening. Let's try to keep the decorum proper, please. So Joe Chamberlain, please. And it'll be followed by Eric Rutledge, please. Or the two of you together.
We're a team tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
You still get 3 minutes each.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We're here, I'm the Executive Director of the Coastside Land Trust, and Eric is our project coordinator, and our office is at 7888 Main Street. And we're here this evening to talk with you about a property that you own, and that's the property behind Safeway, which is a incredibly beautiful piece of riparian land that was set aside, and the city accepted it when that area was developed, when the Safeway store and all that was put in. And then the Coastal Commission asked us to take the conservation easement. So our responsibility is to monitor it annually. And over the last few years, we've been seeing an increase in people living there and making a mess. And we've had several cleanup days, and Rick, you were joined us for the California Coastal Cleanup Day, and I thank you for that. And at this point in time, it's become really bad. Eric monitored with the team in January, and I think you see the pictures, and there's no restroom, so the feces and urine is now washing into the creek, and the bedding and things. And so we've worked really hard pulling together a lot of community support people to have a cleanup day on the 29th of March. And we would very much like you to join us. We have a permit from the city to do that. But we wanted to do it in as acceptable and kind of way as possible, because people do live there. And so Eric has put together a really good team of people and some logistics that I'd like him to speak to you about, bringing in Coastside Hope and the folks from the county environmental health and the sheriff's department, so that we do the very best that we can for the community. And we like to think of ourselves as working with you in partnership on this. So I'll turn my time over to Eric.
Thanks, Joe. Mayor Mueller and City Council, I can just talk a little bit about where we have been in the past and where we're at now. As Joe said, Mayor Rick was out, or former Mayor Rick was out at our cleanup day in September, so thank you for that. And by the way, it started raining at that cleanup day about 15 minutes in, so if anybody is wondering what former Mayor Rick looks like, soaking wet, I have photos, and I'm happy to share those. But it seems like every time we go out there, we take one step forward and about 3 steps back, because the next time we go out, there's just even more trash, even more pollution. And so we've realized that this problem is something that we can't solve on our own. We're happy to go out there and monitor and report on the conditions. But at our last monitoring in January, myself and Joe and the rest of our volunteers just came to the conclusion that we can't do it alone. And so we've asked for help from Coastside Hope, from the San Mateo County Homeless Outreach Team, to assist in other areas of the cleanup day, in particular the outreach to the homeless individuals who live there. And so we can pull a lot of volunteers. Coastside Land Trust has a great group of volunteers. We can pull 20 to 40 people to get out there and pick up what's been left there. But we do need help from the city, from the homeless outreach team, and from others in the community to offer support to the people who are living in there. So we appreciate your support in all of this. Thank you.
Thank you for your work with the underserved out there.
Yeah, so just to add a few details, so the sheriff's department will be with us that day, and starting next week, folks from Coastside Hope and from the outreach folks will be visiting the homeless to let them know that we're coming, so they will understand that we're coming. They'll be given special bags to put their items in that they do not want taken away, because we don't want to take anyone's personal possessions. We just want to pick up what's been abandoned. We also want to make sure they understand all of those support services that are available to them, and that we hope that they will take advantage of those. So it's a multi-week process to do the best that we can. So thank you.
Yeah, quick question for you. So just the details, I'm definitely going to join you again, so thank you for all the details. But so it's March 29th, and where are you organizing for that?
We're meeting at the Oak Avenue Park, on the other side. We're hoping, we're urging that it's 18 and up, because but if we decided to set up there, because we thought if families do come, we'll take them up to Stone Pine and do a cleanup in the park there. And then 18 and up, we'll have them come and help. And Larry from Public Works is bringing dumpsters, and I think we're starting at 10, is that correct? 10 to noon on the 29th. It's a Saturday.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. Next one, I believe, is Sue Pritchard. I'm not positive. Sue, welcome.
Thank you.
And Jennifer, you will follow. I think you're both on the same comments.
Good evening. I'm Sue Pritchard. I live in Montara, and I was the lead artist for MacDutra Park. And we made MacDutra Park in 2000. It was a grant from the Peninsula foundation for materials. It was $4,000. The city took 9 months to decide if they would accept the project, which they did. And I have a letter here from the city thankful and enjoying it and encouraging me to be on any other project or organization that wanted to make things more beautiful. I am actually amazed. People are calling me and telling me that the whole thing is going to be demolished. This is very, very upsetting. Hundreds of people put a stone in there. One family that I saw, grandma put a stone, mother put a stone, and the child put a stone. And people do come back there, and it's their heritage and their culture. Sometimes I went into the dentist's office, and the assistant said, "Oh, I love what you've done." Yesterday I was in a store, and someone said, "But it's so beautiful, and I love it." Now, I know that there are problems, one of which, several years ago, there was no money for maintenance, and it got very, very dirty. I'm talking about the mosaic, not the bathroom. And the mosaics got really, really dirty, and they are very dirty now. They need to be pressure washed. And also, the flowers were just abandoned. And it's a very sad thing, because you talk of children, and many children worked on that. I have pictures of little tiny preschoolers going all around that circle and making animals, and they would draw their animal and put it on there, and they're proud of it. Now those people are 10 years older, and they're coming back and saying, "I'm a part of this community. This is a part of me. I made this more beautiful." So I'm urging you to include me in all the plans that are there. I know there's some plumbing issues with the store next door, but I don't think that requires the demolition of the whole park. And so I would like to be included, and also no one's asked permission, and legally I think that's something that's supposed to happen to an artist of a public artwork. But mostly, we're talking seeds, we're talking children, we're talking families, grandparents. This deserves to be preserved in some way and in some form. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have my 2 letters, one of thanks from the city, and the other one, the Half Moon Bay Review, talking about the story about how this came about. And also, we were given 2 full pages, 6 photos in color in the San Francisco Chronicle to talk about how wonderful this was.
Thank you. I'll let the next speaker, just hand that to staff, please. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Silvestri. I'm one of the supportive artists to the project. This is a public art, and to see construction going through there and having it demolished with no consideration for moving the mosaic or taking care of the mosaic so it could possibly be moved to Carter Park or redistributed within the community. I witnessed the project with people from all over the world coming in on vacation with their children, taking a stroll down Main Street, and they would stop and talk to Sue, and she would encourage them to make something. It's a legacy. I understand that Robert Pickett is trying to revamp and clean up Carter Park. If we could preserve the artwork and move it maybe to that area, or make a space for some of the artwork to be reinstalled into McDoucher Plaza, as I understand it's going to be called. We would like to work with all of you to preserve this. Sue is my friend. She worked on it for 2 years. And it was amazing. I wrote an article, it appeared in the Chamber of Commerce, that Sue was like the Johnny Appleseed of art, and she has done an amazing amount of mosaic here in the community. Main Street Co-works, School over across the highway, and parks and Mountain View and other places. So I'd like to speak up on behalf of all the women that cut tiles, hand-cut tiles, that repurposed the tile has been repurposed. We went to recycling place and picked up the tiles. A lot of the colors you can't even get anymore. And I have a letter, I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to hand it to you from another person who cut tile. Cutting tile by hand is a lot of hard work, and it took almost 2 years to complete this project. So I just want to make you aware that this project has a lot of passion behind it, and a lot of people, and a lot of people care for it. So thank you for listening, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your artistic work. Appreciate it. So this, I have no more public forum cards, so we will move on to the consent calendar, please. And
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion that we approve items on the consent calendar 1 through 8. And to the city attorney on item 7, the traffic regulation, do they need to be spoken out or not? No. Then I would just move we approve 1 through 8.
I second.
it's been moved and second. Any further discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, so ordered. At this time, I would like to ask the council if we could move the Peninsula Humane Society to the first part of the agenda this evening. It'll be very brief, I believe, and I know our county representative, Dean Peterson, is getting ready to leave the county and leave all of us, but he has to head off to another meeting, and staff would, if we don't need a formal approval on moving the agenda item, do we? No. So we will go on with agenda item.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Mueller. This evening, you do have an item before you, and our Administrative Services Project Manager, Michelle Pollard, will be able to give the staff report. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. The item before you this evening is the approval of the Memorandum of Agreement with the County of San Mateo to share the construction costs for a new animal care shelter through a 30-year interest-free lease. Since 1952, San Mateo County has contracted with Peninsula Humane Society for animal control, field, and sheltering service. All 20 cities in the county have in turn contracted with the county for these services that are provided at 12 Airport Boulevard in San Mateo. The San Mateo County Department of Public Works conducted inspections 2009 and 2011 and determined that the building was functionally obsolete and that substantial renovation of the existing facility was not a viable option. To build a new animal care shelter, the estimated cost is between $15.1 million to $20.2 million. The agreement requires that the 20 cities contribute money to share the construction cost. That and the formula takes into account the shelter usage and the population. Approval of this agreement will result in an annual estimated cost of $18,660 to $24,962, depending on the final cost of construction. The city's current expense for animal control services is $163,465, and the construction of the new shelter will bring the shelter within today's animal care guidelines. The functions include receiving and housing stray animals, serving as a location for the public when looking for lost pets or surrendering unwanted animals, sheltering animals, spray, neuter clinic, vaccination clinic, licensing, microchipping, veterinary care, and animal behavioral work. Tonight, you are being asked to agree to participate in the cost to rebuild the new shelter, authorizing the city manager to sign the memorandum of agreement with the County of San Mateo to share construction costs for the new animal care shelter through a 30-year lease, interest-free lease. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Otherwise, would the county representative like to say a couple words quickly? I'm not supposed to use that word quickly tonight. I'll keep reminding myself. I'm the mayor. He said I could do it.
Good evening, Council. I'm Dean Peterson, your Director of Environmental Health. I really have nothing to add, only here for questions, and I appreciate your time tonight.
Well, as you can all understand, that San Mateo County and the city of Half Moon Bay really care about our pets and our friends. And this is a huge investment. We pay a lot of money to Peninsula Humane Society, but I think if we have our own property, this is my opinion, at least we'll have a little better control over the future of our animal services in San Mateo County.
To the point, Mayor, that's exactly our purpose of rebuilding the shelter. The shelter will actually be owned by the county, not the Humane Society, which will allow us to be more flexible in the future when selecting a contractor. So yes, you're correct.
Patrick?
I have just a comment to make, and it's not about the shelter. I just want to thank Dean for all the years of service to the cities and to the county of San Mateo. He is retiring. I hate to see you retire. You've been a great friend to the city and also to the Pumpkin Festival, and I just want to thank you for all your services.
Oh, you're very welcome. I've always enjoyed coming out to the coast. I've been out here to talk about many issues, whether it be septic systems, wells, plastic bags, pumpkins.
That's enough. You're too young to retire, Dean, but I know you're...
I'm too young not to retire, John.
Yeah, that's right. I will just mention quickly that I know Councilman Kowalczyk had huge concerns over this, and we've met a number of times as individuals with different cities to stress our concern about Peninsula Humane Society. It's kind of a big little organization that we're all trying to be involved with to make sure that we get what we pay for. Yeah, as you can see, it's a large sum of money that comes out of our budget every year for their service, and let's just hope we continue to move forward. And I will add that there's really nobody out there that wants to do this job. Simple as that. I think staff can agree with me on that it's not like some other firm's going to come in and take it over. Yes?
So thank you, John, and thanks for recognizing my concern about this. So I think it's a separate topic. I think this is just about the facility, and you answered my question, so I appreciate that. It was my question was who's going to own it, and the county owns it, and that's something I'm going to support. So I think that makes sense. And so with that, do I need specific language, or I move to approve the construction cost sharing for new animal care shelter?
And you authorize the city manager per the staff report to sign?
Exactly.
I'd second.
It's been moved in second. Any further discussion on this investment we are making for our little friends and furry friends and critters out there? Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, so ordered. Moving on now to ordinances and public hearings. So at this time, we will move on to item 9, I believe, right? Working on my papers here, guys.
That is correct, and that item is an appeal of a permit, and tonight the city attorney, Tony Condotti, will be able to give the staff report, and then you can open the public hearing after that.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Miller, members of the City Council. In February of 2009, the city contracted with a crew from the California Conservation Corps to go down into the Kehoe ditch and to perform some very minimal vegetation and debris removal activities. It was intended as a stopgap measure, preparing for the onset of winter rains. The cost of the contract was around $5,000, and the item before you this evening is, of all things, a retroactive coastal development permit to permit the activity that occurred now just over 5 years ago. The request is that you approve the coastal development permit to retroactively permit debris removal activities within the Kehoe ditch that took place in February of 2009. This comes to you by way of an appeal. This is actually, if you're all familiar with the Kehoe ditch, this is actually the 4th public hearing that has been held on this matter since October. The first was before the planning director in the form of a planning director issued permit. That was appealed to the Planning Commission. A hearing was held before the Planning Commission in December. It was continued, and another public hearing was held on January 14th, at which time the Planning Commission rejected the appeal and approved the coastal development permit. To give you a little bit further background, as you know, until about the mid-1990s, the city routinely maintained the vegetation in the Kehoe Ditch. For whatever reason, I don't have the institutional memory to go back that far, but for whatever reason that was discontinued. There were several years without any maintenance. In about 2005, the city contracted with the Somas engineering firm to design a project to stabilize erosion problems that had occurred within the ditch, and to design options for dealing with those problems. A preliminary plan was prepared, and in July of 2008, the city was in the process of processing a coastal development permit for the ditch stabilization project. The appellant that is appealing tonight's matter submitted a letter to the city in early July of 2008. The matter had been scheduled to be heard by the Planning Commission on July 24th, 2008. The letter, I think, was dated July 10th, and it was a 25-page letter that raised many of the same issues that formed the basis of this evening's appeal. I don't know why the project in 2008 was deferred, but that was what gave rise to the work that was ordered in early 2009. And subsequent to the February 2009 maintenance work, as we know, a lawsuit was filed alleging that the city violated its coastal regulations as well as the Coastal Act by failing to obtain a coastal development permit. The evidence in that case showed that the project was described to the City Council as involving the use of hand tools only. It was also described that way to the planning director, who determined that a coastal development permit wasn't required. In the trial, the judge determined that, in fact, a coastal development permit was required because under coastal regulations, if work in a sensitive resource area involves the use of mechanized equipment, in this case a chainsaw, a coastal development permit is required. The case settled following trial court's statement of decision in that case. Under the terms of the settlement agreement, the city agreed to process this coastal development permit retroactively. Under our local coastal program and land use plan, when a coastal development permit is processed in a sensitive area, this is a riparian area and also potential sensitive habitat, a biological report is required to be prepared. Under the terms of the settlement, the city agreed to obtain such a biological report and to incorporate into the retroactive permit mitigation measures that were recommended by the biologist. The settlement agreement also said, however, that the mitigation measures had to be reasonable in light of their practicability, the passage of time, and the cost of implementation. In this case, the biologist report found that there were no significant environmental impacts, that the riparian vegetation that had been removed was restored, that the ditch is potential red-legged frog and San Francisco garter snake habitat, but it's not ideal habitat, but it recommended avoidance measures for future ditch maintenance projects. Following that, the biological report was circulated to various regulatory agencies, and we received some communications from the Coastal Commission, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, California Department of Fish and Wildlife Service. The result of those was a meeting that was held in early December of last year, at which the terms of a condition were agreed upon that would be incorporated into the project. The key condition would require the planting of willow riparian vegetation over the length of 70 feet of contiguous length of the ditch where the willow vegetation is currently lacking, and to remove Cape ivy and other invasive species in the area where the planting occurs. This issue was presented to the Planning Commission, and several residents who live along the ditch appeared and expressed concerns about the planting of willows adjacent to their properties, particularly whether or not that would have a negative effect on the very real existing erosion problems that are going on the ditch. And as a result of that, the Planning Commission did not include that condition, even though at a staff level it had been discussed and tentatively agreed upon between staff of the city and the Coastal Commission. Subsequent to the Planning Commission hearing, we saw a supplemental report from the biologist who initially did the biological report. The report confirmed that, in fact, the planting of willows would not exacerbate erosion control problems along the ditch, and it would indeed have a stabilizing effect upon the banks of the ditch. And so the biologist considered planting of willow vegetation as a positive way of stabilizing the banks. As a result of that, the recommended action is to, as the Planning Commission did, to reject the appeal and to approve the issuance of a coastal development permit, but to include the language that was discussed and agreed upon between the staff and Coastal Commission staff, which says that the city shall increase the density of willow riparian vegetation over a length of 70 contiguous feet, which is the length of impact resulting from the 2009 work, along the southeastern span of the Kehoe Ditch, where native riparian vegetation is sparse, provided that the city shall endeavor to obtain consent of adjacent property owners on both sides of the ditch prior to such planting, or alternatively, if property owner consent cannot be obtained, to increase density of willow riparian vegetation at the Caltrans mitigation site, which is a small area alongside Pillarcitos Creek that's just south of the SAM plant. So what we would do if this condition is approved is seek to obtain the consent of the adjacent property owners. If we're not able, if none of the property owners all along the ditch are in favor of having willows planted adjacent to their properties, then we would focus on the Caltrans mitigation site for the willow planting and the invasive species removal. That concludes my report. I'm happy to respond to any council member questions or comments.
I think what I'll do is I'll open the public hearing, and then we'll come back and they'll respond to staff's questions if there's any. So at this time, I'll open. Patrick, you were not in the room, so you didn't hear my comments earlier. I was not going to receive any, but since you were not in the room, I will make an exception and you can turn your card in. People that were in the room when the agenda item starts. So at this time, Deborah Ruddock, please come forward on agenda item 9.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm a resident of Half Moon Bay, residing at 367 Metzger Street. The appellant of PDP 050-12, Mr. Benjamin, could not be here this evening because of planned travel. He asked me to convey his regrets and to communicate his request that you uphold his appeal and reject the Planning Director and Planning Commission's approval of a retroactive coastal development permit for a debris removal project in the Kehoe Drainage Channel in February 2009. As the city attorney points out, the appeal to the council reasserts Mr. Benjamin's concerns expressed previously in his appeal to the planning director. The appellant is challenging the project because he believes it is inconsistent with the coastal resources policies of the Coastal Act, which is Division 20 of the California Public Resources Code, the city's certified local coastal program, and the implementing ordinance. And you can see page 6 of the appeal for a list of specific provisions of the LCP that he believes are not being followed by the city in their approval of this retroactive CDP. He also believes that there are violations of the California Environmental Quality Act. In addition, the appellant believes the project disregards the environmental protections of the Endangered Species Act with the potential for take of special status species. He has indicated to me that if this appeal is denied, he most likely will appeal it to the California Coastal Commission. And as you and he are much more familiar with the details of this issue, I will step down at this time, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for relaying the comments. This time, Paulette, please.
Hi, good evening. I actually did not put my card in based on this retroactive CDP. I just wanted to commend the city for a meeting that we were at today, and that we were actually had a dialogue about going forward with some ideas about the Kehoe watercourse, and I was very grateful to the city for making that happen and for us to be able to have a dialogue rather than, just back and forth this way. It's very important to be able to discuss things openly. So I just want to give my appreciation for that. Thank you.
Thank you, sorry. Patrick Johnson would be the last card in the public, in this agenda item.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. I apologize for last meeting and how I brought forward my emotions, and I won't do that again. I apologize to all of you. I would like to bring forward, and I'm speaking tonight, as always, as a resident on Kehoe, and I'm going to call it the ditch because that's what it is, and futuristic, what we'd like to call it, a water course, because that's what we want to call it, something different. But going back to the findings of the conditions of planting 70 or so linear feet of willow trees in the area that's not even in the area that they've cut. They want to plant them randomly, so keep that in mind. And I wanted to come up tonight, and when I caught that on the slide, that's on discussion, I want to give you real life of what we see. These willow trees are very large and top heavy, and every time we cut them, you get one branch, you'll have 20 new ones. And what happens then is they become very top heavy, and they have fallen down over by my neighbors to the left. That has happened, and that created the erosion on my side and Franca's side and all the way down the Kehoe ditch. So keep that in mind when you make that decision. They literally they were like this and they're now like this, and they're leaning against the bank is what's happening, and then they're sprouting up, and then from there whatever branches are hitting the ground will spread out again. They're like bamboo. And that's what's happening right now. So if we continue on with replanting and replanting, we're asking for more troubles. The other thing that we have to keep in mind is when we first moved there, we were getting plenty of sunlight and we could see the mountains in the high school and all that. We can't see that anymore. And our neighbors down south of us, or at the end of the ditch, I should say, literally, they don't even have any sunlight coming through their backyard. They have mildew on their decks. The redwood's just completely rotting out. The fences are rotting out because there is very limited sunlight and a lot of moisture. And what's happening is people are now going to their dish TVs. They can't get their dish to work because of the blocking of the willow trees. They're putting their gardens in the front of their houses. So now we're changing the dynamics of how the Kehoe residents are changing their homes. They're putting gardens in the front of their house. The other thing is solar. Everyone's going solar, and you've got shade. That means you've got to change the location of your solar panels. So there's other things in the big picture that we need to make sure that we think through before we adopt that resolution through the Coastal Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. This time I'll close the public hearing and open council discussions to comments or questions to staff. Councilmember Patrick.
Through the chair, Mr. Candotti, the willow trees, the planting of the willow trees of 70 feet, which is way more than what was removed. So in your recommendation was that we have property owners' permission before we do that? And if we don't have it, we're not going to plant them?
First of all, the 70 feet was the estimated linear footage of the area where willows were removed from the ditch in 2009. Actually, the willows that were taken out in 2009 were just those that were growing right in the channel. So it didn't eliminate the corridor of willow trees as a mitigation, well, not even as a mitigation, in order to satisfy the Coastal Commission and other regulators. This was a suggested enhancement of the corridor there. It would be, willows would be planted outside of the area where they grow currently, and the 70 feet is basically the estimated linear footage that was affected by the willows that were cut in 2009. Yes, under the terms of this condition, we would seek permission from the property owners adjacent. If we don't obtain that, then we have as a backup to turn our attention to the Caltrans mitigation site. And that was a condition that was reviewed and endorsed by Coastal Commission staff.
All right, I just wanted to make sure that that was my understanding. So people that do not want those willow trees in their backyards, by our mitigation, we can put it into the Caltrans mitigating site.
That's right.
Correct, thank you.
Any council members?
Yeah, just a comment. So the whole retroactive CDP is sort of interesting, right? So it's backward looking. It's issuing a CDP for work that has happened. There was a lawsuit, there's a judgment, and we're fulfilling the requirements of that judgment. Is that all correct?
It was the settlement that followed a statement of decision. The statement of decision merely said that the city violated the LCP by not having a coastal
so we're meeting the obligation of that statement of decisions.
Of the settlement agreement.
Of the settlement agreement. So I don't understand. I mean, I have hundreds of pages of documents to go through, and reading all of them in preparation of tonight's meeting was less than a joy. And it seems to be a colossal waste of time, right? So I'm going to make a motion here. Find my language. I'm going to move to deny the appeal and affirm the Planning Commission's approval of PDP 050-12.
I assume you meant per the recommended action?
Per the recommended action, of course. And noting that, Councilmember Patridge, I appreciate your comment that if the residents do not want the mitigation adjacent to their property, then there's a viable alternative. So I appreciate that.
Second, and through the chair, I'd like to make a comment once we're through vote.
Yes, it's been moved in second. Now go ahead with your comment.
Could I just interject one brief comment?
The motion is still a little confusing to me also.
Yes, let me address that, and then I just want to make one other comment. There is a resolution in your packet, and so the action that I would request is to adopt the resolution denying the appeal and affirming the Planning Commission's approval of a retroactive coastal development permit to permit debris removal activities within the city-owned Kehoe Ditch in February of 2009, subject to the findings Exhibit A and conditions Exhibit B, which were modified from the conditions approved by the Planning Commission, contained in the attached resolution.
Happy to restate or just let that go on the record.
My comment is just very briefly, the biologist found that the Caltrans mitigation site was a viable habitat for California red-legged frogs and San Francisco garter snakes, and the mitigation applied to that area would enhance the existing red-legged frog habitat. So whereas the Kehoe Ditch is potential habitat for frogs and snakes, they have been identified at the Caltrans mitigation site, and so doing the project there would have a significant benefit for the resources there.
Adding the willows there will enhance it more, so maybe they'll all motate over there.
So I don't know if we need to rescind the second and the first motion.
I understood the first motion to be exactly what I just...
Right. And if you're all wondering, Councilman Qualcheck commented, I mean, it's 355 pages. I did also punish myself as much as I could to read through it, and I did highlight. I'm a highlighter type of person. I think there's we're just kind of rehashing things, but we talked about mechanization. It was a chainsaw. It was not a D8, number one. The Coastal Commission and staff has worked really hard to bring this to closure, but I understand the appeal process, which the appellant is more than eligible to go through, so we will deal with that at the time. So at this time, we'll have a roll call vote on this agenda item, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, so ordered. Now we are moving on.
John?
Yes.
We're very glad tonight that we're putting this chapter behind us on the Kehoe ditch. And I think at this point in time, the city owes the residents who back up to the Kehoe ditch a permanent drainage solution. And this solution could build off the 2005 Kehoe ditch study, but it needs to be updated and supplemented by the addition of a biologist, environmental expert. And when the city has a final updated recommendation for a Kehoe ditch solution, we owe the residents to back this fully, no matter really, in my mind, who opposes this. If this is the correct thing, the right way to solve this issue, we need to get behind this, get the residents working with us, and take care of this once and for all.
I just want to second that opinion. I think it's the citizens along that ditch do deserve that, so I would support that.
Thank you. Moving on. Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was just going to third that. And, we have a resident here, March West, who came to talk to me. She lives on Kehoe. She's probably one of the original people that lived there. And she said, Naomi, you used to clean the ditch. I go, I know, we used to clean the ditch. So I truly think that we need to do something. And I think, I've been thinking about this long and hard, and I think to regain the backyard of those people that live at Kehoe, one of the alternatives that I think we need to look at is putting in a culvert, covering it up, and giving people back their backyards. So I think that we all should start thinking of some creative ways of trying to repair the Kehoe ditch, maintain it, but also think about the poor people that have lost their quality of life.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 10. I have the cards in front of me at this point, so we will ask for, is it item 10? Yeah.
It is item 10, yes.
Yeah.
And it's regarding the Main Street Bridge ballot initiatives, and City Attorney Tony Condati will give the presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Mueller, members of the City Council. The item before you tonight, there are two ballot measures proposed for your consideration to add to the June 3rd, 2014 statewide primary ballot. As you know, on February 10th, we received a notice of intent to circulate an initiative petition. The measure that was proposed to be circulated was styled the Main Street Bridge Preservation Act, and it would seek to restrict the city's ability to undertake a project to expand or to demolish the Main Street Bridge without a subsequent vote approving that action. At the February 18th City Council meeting, the Council directed that the measure be prepared for, as a Council-sponsored initiative for consideration to be added to the June 3rd primary ballot, thereby bypassing several months of signature gathering, but also giving the city a fairly early gauge of public sentiment on the bridge. while in the meantime you consider to incur engineers and consultant costs who are in the process of attempting to move the project forward. At the suggestion of Councilmember Alfano, there was also direction given to prepare a competing measure that would provide the city with a little bit more flexibility in its approach to dealing with the problems of the bridge. So that is the product that's before you tonight. We have two ballot measures for your consideration. One is entitled the Main Street Bridge Safety and Accessibility Act, and the second is entitled the Main Street Bridge Preservation Act, after the notice of intent to circulate that we received on February 10th. What I've attempted to do here is to prepare two facially neutral ballot measures that are designed to gauge the public's sentiment about approaches to dealing with the bridge. It is not an attempt to influence or manipulate public opinion on the bridge. It is really an attempt to give the City Council an idea of how the public views the current path that we're headed in with regard to substantially improving the function of the bridge, and in addition to addressing its structural safety deficiencies and improving the safety of it in terms of its design. There are two competing concepts for the public to weigh if you decide to move forward with both measures. I want to make it clear that you don't have to choose to move forward with both measures. You could decide to do one or the other or neither of them. You really have the range of options available to you. The first one I'll talk about is the Main Street Bridge Safety and Accessibility Act. What this measure would do is establish as the official policy of the people of the City of Half Moon Bay in dealing with the Main Street Bridge to address both structural and functional safety deficiencies, including but not limited to roadway alignment and width to accommodate bicycle lanes and meet current Caltrans design safety standards, width and design of walkways to fully comply with the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The policy would further direct the city to pursue the option that is the most cost-effective for local taxpayers by minimizing expenditure of general fund revenue and maximizing the use of available grant funds. The policy further would seek to the extent feasible, to avoid construction during the peak tourist season and minimize impacts to residents and nearby businesses. What this does not do, this ballot measure does not do, in keeping with the council's desire to provide the City Council with additional flexibility, it does not commit the City Council to a definite course of action before all necessary environmental review is completed and all necessary permits are obtained. Nor does it preclude consideration of potentially feasible alternatives during the environmental review process, either modifications to the design that's proposed or not doing a project at all. The no project alternative remains an option. And it doesn't preclude the consideration of mitigation measures or project modifications that are identified either during the environmental review process or as part of any other regulatory approval you might need, such as obtaining the approval of the Army Corps of Engineers or the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, National Marine Fisheries Service, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, all of whom will no doubt want to weigh in on the project as it goes forward. Turning my attention now to the Main Street Bridge Preservation Act. It establishes as the official city policy that Main Street Bridge's historical, visual, and physical integrity, including appearance and character, shall be preserved intact. This is directly mirroring the language of the notice of intent that was submitted on February 10th. It does not identically copy the notice of intent. The citizen-sponsored measure, which, as it should be, was clearly designed to sway public opinion toward a particular point of view. It had several whereas provisions that were argumentative. Those have all been omitted from the measure that's before you tonight. This is a more neutrally worded ordinance. It also omits some provisions of the operative language that were ambiguous and redundant, in my opinion, and also, as a result, I think potentially could give rise to legal challenges in the future as future city councils and members of the public struggle to interpret what exactly it means. So, specifically, the operative provisions that were omitted are on the screen before you, and in order to read this, I need to put on my glasses, but the language that was proposed initially in the citizens-sponsored measure states, notwithstanding any other provisions of this chapter, the Main Street Bridge's historical, visual, and physical integrity, including appearance and character, shall be preserved intact, and its demolition or physical expansion is prohibited. Thank you. Unless preservation of the bridge and its historical, visual, and physical integrity is rejected, and such demolition or physical expansion is authorized by the City Council and at least a majority of the city's electors voting at a general or special election at which such a measure is submitted. And the language that was stricken is a repeat of the phrase at the initial part of the sentence, preservation of the bridge and its historical, visual, and physical integrity is rejected. And again, I felt that was redundant, and I also felt that it is a potential litigation trap when, say, for instance, the city is prepared to move forward with a ballot measure. How is it going to be worded? And from a legal standpoint, it's problematic to tie the city's hands as to how you word a ballot measure before the city council decides to place it on the ballot. So I've recommended that you modify the language as that. A little bit more information about the proposed measure. As the notice of intent version did, it would amend the local coastal program land use plan, policy 7-8, and the municipal code section 1839045 to add the provisions of the measure to the LCP and the zoning code. Those would then be submitted to the Coastal Commission for certification. And then, obviously, once Coastal Commission certifies an amendment to the LCP, in order to change that in the future, you need to submit a new amendment, and the Coastal Commission has to certify that as well. The measure would require the city, pending Coastal Commission certification, to adhere to the restrictions contained in the ordinance while you await Coastal Commission certification. So it assures that the city wouldn't attempt to slide something through before the Coastal Commission has a chance to weigh in and certify the LCP amendments. Both measures would require a simple majority vote for approval. Both measures, as I said, are written in neutral language. There will be an opportunity to submit arguments in favor of and opposed to both measures, and that's where the arguments will be made, as well as in whatever efforts people make to get their point across in the months coming up to the election. Both are mutually exclusive, so theoretically, both could pass, be approved by a majority vote. If that occurs, then the one that gets the most votes will trump the other, and the measure with fewer votes will not go into effect. Just sitting here thinking about it, I realized I did not say what would occur if they received the exact same number of votes, but I don't think that's very likely. I would add some issues that came to my attention fairly recently. One is the question of CEQA compliance. We did receive a letter late this afternoon from the Kachet law firm representing the Friends of the Main Street Bridge. The letter cites a California Supreme Court case from 2001 called Friends of Sierra Madre versus City of Sierra Madre, in which the Supreme Court analyzed whether a city-sponsored ballot initiative would be subject to the requirements of CEQA. There is a provision in CEQA that says that if an action of the city council is ministerial, meaning if the circumstances presented to you, you have no choice but to take that action, then it's not subject to CEQA. And case law has held that when a citizen-sponsored ballot measure is circulated, if it gets enough petition signatures to qualify for the ballot, and if it therefore is presented to you, you have to submit it to a vote of the people, and you can't say, we don't want to do that because we haven't complied with CEQA. Well, in the Friends of Sierra Madre case, that involved an ordinance that proposed removing certain landmark properties from that city's historic or register of historic landmarks. The city had analyzed a proposal to adopt that ordinance that would have specified certain buildings that would not qualify any longer as historic resources and would have removed those buildings from that inventory. Initially, the city staff analyzed it and determined that in order to do that, they would need to comply with CEQA because it's a historical resource. They would need to obtain an environmental impact report. And then it was proposed that a way to avoid that would be to just place a measure on the ballot. And the Supreme Court said, no, the exemption for ministerial actions, that would be a citizen-sponsored measure, don't apply if the city council has the discretion to place a measure on the ballot. So the Supreme Court said that the city violated CEQA by not doing an environmental study before placing that type of a measure on the ballot voluntarily. We looked at that issue in drafting this ballot measure and concluded that it didn't apply here. And the reason why is that a threshold question in asking whether CEQA applies is whether the action that is being considered constitutes approval of a project. And approval of a project means the decision by a public agency which commits the agency to a definite course of action in regard to a project intended to be carried out by any person. The exact date of approval of any project is a matter determined by each public agency according to its rules, regulations, and ordinances, and legislative actions in regard to a project often constitute approval. That's the regulations interpreting the California Environmental Quality Act. The question here is whether or not this ballot measure constitutes approval of a project, and in our opinion it doesn't because of the language that we've included that says, nothing contained herein shall be construed to commit the City Council to a definite course of action in regard to any such project before the city has completed all necessary environmental review and permit processes, to preclude the consideration of potentially feasible alternatives to any proposed project or design as part of any necessary environmental review, including but not limited to a no project alternative, or to preclude the consideration of potentially feasible mitigation measures that are identified during any necessary environmental review process, or project modifications that are required in order to comply with any other statutory or regulatory requirements. Now that language, I didn't cite the provisions of the CEQA law that gave rise to that language, but it's directly from the regulations and the case law that have interpreted CEQA that have found that this type of an action would not be considered a project that you would be precluded from taking before doing a CEQA analysis of potentially an environmental impact report. I would add that prior to finalizing a draft of this measure, I ran it by an attorney with the Ramey Thomas firm out of Sacramento. They literally wrote the definitive treatise on CEQA in California. We've worked with them over the years on various projects. The attorney made some very minor suggested revisions to the measure, but concluded that she agreed with my analysis that it would not require CEQA review, and that the Friends of Sierra Madre case and other cases which have found that CEQA is required don't apply to this. Lastly, I would just comment that late Thursday, I think it was after hours even, I received a copy of a complaint that has been filed with the Fair Political Practices Commission, alleging that Councilmember Alfano has a conflict of interest with regard to his business because of its proximity to the bridge project. Measured from the property line, it's approximately, I think, 460 feet from the bridge project. There's a presumption in the Political Reform Act that if your property is within 500 feet of a project, that any financial effect of the decision would be considered a material financial effect that would disqualify you from being a participant in the project. This issue was brought to my attention by Councilmember Alfano, in fact, last year, middle part of the year, and it was our recommendation. Well, first of all, we initially analyzed it and found that although there's an initial presumption that there would be a conflict of interest, under the circumstances presented here, that presumption probably wouldn't apply. But as a precaution, we recommended asking the FPPC for a formal opinion on that. We sent a letter back in July, I think, and received a letter back from the Fair Political Practices Commission in August of last year, clearing Councilmember Alfano to participate in the decision. The allegations contained in the complaint that were filed with the FPPC were slightly different than the factual information that was sent to the FPPC with our letter. But we've analyzed those as well and determined that the analysis doesn't change. So we believe that the FPPC's initial response to the inquiry made by my office will still apply, and that Councilmember Alfano does not have a conflict of interest that would preclude his participation. So I'm happy to respond to any questions or comments. But that concludes my report.
Thank you for that excellent presentation. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. I have 5 cards at this time. The first will be David Oblovi, and he's not present, so we will move to George Mutef, please. No comments from George Mutef. Mr. John Lynch, please.
Mayor and members of the council, we sure have had a lot of palaver on this issue. But what is being proposed tonight is not the citizens' initiative that they had for the preservation of the bridge. It's has some changes to it. I think the only way this would understand the scrutiny of the law if it was submitted exactly as the citizens submitted the initiative. And to do anything less than that, you're going to wind up not have a tough time withstanding legal challenge, even though I heard what Mr. Condotti said. So if you're wise, if you're prudent, you table both of these measures tonight.
Thank you. Next, Jerry Steinberg, please.
Jerry Steinberg, 591 Terrace Avenue, Half Moon Bay. It would appear that the differences of opinion on the Half Moon Bay downtown bridge is obviously headed for litigation between the residents and the present city council. In the 17 years that I've lived on Terrace Avenue on Half Moon Bay, I've witnessed various litigation based on differences of opinion between the residents and the Half Moon Bay Council. I've watched the stopping of a developer's $500,000 paid for EIR through an incredibly one-sided agreement between the city and the developer, which actually forbid the city engineer and the staff from making any negative comments on engineering review of the project agreement. I actually raised that with the American Society of Civil Engineers, and I was told to wait to see if anything was going to happen to actually try to get that enforced. I've watched this council and the contracted city engineer addiction for groveling for grant money from the San Mateo Transit Authority, on which a Half Moon Bay council member is a director, for a project that was incompatible with Caltrans' basic design requirements and that has been turned down by Caltrans, the Coastal Commission, and the CDP has been pulled by the Half Moon Bay City Council. Why not avoid future litigation? Allow the continued work by the outside consultants on the EIR. The residents' proposed referendum should be held in November and be one of the issues in the 3 seats on the City Council up for grabs in November. Isn't it time for allowing to see democracy in action? Thank you.
Thank you. My final card is Jim Larimer, please.
Almost 4 years ago, Caltrans served you guys with notice that there's a problem with the Main Street Bridge. It's both functionally obsolete and perhaps structurally unsound. I think at that point you hired a firm, or the City Council hired a firm, to recommend an action, and the action was to replace the bridge. That's become an incredibly controversial recommendation, and even though it's been explained over and over again that that is a recommendation that may never happen because of the long and complicated process for which any proposal to do anything regarding infrastructure must pass through, it has remained a controversial issue in this community. I commend your actions to put this issue to a vote through a referendum in June. I don't see any need to continue to spend public money on a project that may never be completed when you could decide the issue sooner rather than later. Although I agree with a comment that was made by Mayor Mueller at a meeting a while ago, that public referendum to decide issues as complicated as an infrastructure issue is not always the best idea. There's a long storied history in American history, and in fact in world history, of a debate over whether direct democracy works best or representative democracy works best. The arguments have been made either way by very notable Americans. Alexander Hamilton, James Madison were opposed to direct democracy. Abe Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt were in favor of it. I think there's a good argument that can be made either way. As Neil Bohr said, some truths are profound truths, and a profound truth is a truth that is right, and the opposite is also right. This may be one of those profound truths. I think the complexity of deciding this issue is very great. Having served on a board myself and dealt with infrastructure issues, I know how complicated they become and how difficult the engineering choices are. There are always trade-offs. I think a resolution that gives the City Council the greatest flexibility in making those trade-offs would be the wisest action the community can take. But you've decided to put this issue before the community. I commend you for doing that, and I hope you'll do it at the earliest possible time, and that would be in June. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Larimer, for our history lesson. At this time, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council for open discussions and comments to staff and whoever would like to start. Councilman Alifano.
I have to say, I understand the logic of the city attorney of trying to take out some of the possibly inflammatory language in the citizen recommended initiative, but I honestly think the initiative as submitted should go forward. I don't think we should do any editing whatsoever. It may not be 100% written properly, but I think that's the way it should move forward. The people put a lot of time and effort into it. I'm assuming they did their best. I don't want to end up later being accused that we changed their message. I think that would be the wrong the wrong issue later. I think it's better now to let theirs go forward. The second thing is, I like the way the city attorney has crafted the alternative resolution, which I think again gives the city the flexibility to do what we think is best. The only thing I would suggest, I don't like the term where it says including but not limited to widening the roadway to add bicycle lanes and the existing pedestrian pathways to meet the standards of ADA. You know, after we had all the meetings here, we sat with business owners and talked, the design meetings, citizen meetings, we've had tons of meetings on this. I think the good thing that's happening now is we're going to go through the CEQA process, we're going to look at alternatives. I think the council's going to have an opportunity again, especially if we put this on the June ballot, to hear what the citizens have to say, what are their preferences. And then I think we can again decide what is the best way to handle the bridge, whether it's do nothing, it's do simple repairs, whether it's replacement, whatever it may turn out to be that is the best for our community. And I go over that bridge almost every day, either on foot or driving. I'll tell you what, a quick one the other day. I was going down to the shop about 9:30 in the morning and a set of doubles pulled out, and he was very careful on going down Main Street. When he got to the bridge, he went very slow, and his left wheel was about a foot over the double yellow. I think the lanes are about roughly 11 and a half feet. They're very narrow, and when you get large vehicles, it's difficult to maneuver through there. Nobody, I think, argues with that. From everything I've heard, at the end of the day, my preference would be to see whatever ends up there, whether it's just repair, rehabilitation, replacement, the bridge should look almost identical to what it is now. If the lanes are slightly wider, I think that makes sense from a safety standpoint. It was designed and built 115 years ago. Things have changed. The pedestrian walkways must be corrected and updated. And they're not historical. They were added to the bridge in what, the 1970s, I think it was. They need to be accessible for people that have disabilities, and they're not now. Even for a normal person, our pedestrian walkways are hazardous. I just don't know that we really need to provide more width for the traffic lanes for bicycles. If you've ridden a bike down Main Street, I have, you take your life in your hands, you weave in and out with the parked cars, and when you get to the bridge, you pedal as fast as you can and hope nobody decides to run you over. I don't really know that we need, for the thousands of bikes that go over there every day, if we need to add any significant width to the traffic lanes. I would prefer we make the lanes wide enough to handle normal traffic, buses, trucks, cars, and then bikes can still make their way across just like they are now. I think if we're talking about 100 feet, you can pedal fast for a few minutes. That would be the only two issues I have. Keep the original citizens initiative just the way it is, and I would prefer to not have this widening for bike lanes in this initiative. We're gonna eventually, hopefully, look at this with a fresh set of eyes after June, and we can make decisions on what is the best way to handle the bridge.
I'd like to just respond to your last part, with all respect, Councilman Alfano. Meeting with Feinstein staff and others the other day, you do not receive federal highway funds unless you meet federal highway safety standards. Is that correct, staff?
That is one of the requirements is that the bridge safety rating be improved to at least an 80. I think Councilmember Alfano's concern could be addressed by deleting the words "to accommodate bike lanes." You could just have the measure address roadway alignment and width to meet current Caltrans design safety standards. Wouldn't preclude you from adding bike lanes as part of the project approval process should you decide to do that, but it would give you, but it would address that issue and omit the bike lane language specifically from this measure, if that's the direction of the council.
That'll bring the bike coalition from the city down, but we can deal with that at another time. Yes, Councilman Kowalczyk.
Thank you. So my comment was going to be around, we weren't limited to, wasn't a requirement for bike lanes. It was a consideration. So I think the suggested refinement makes that acceptable to me, hopefully to you too. The other thing I wanted to point out that in terms of width, just take you back a little bit to the previous discussions. Intent was not a 48-foot, whatever, super wide superstructure, right? The intent is a historical-looking bridge befitting this community, consistent with the look that we have currently. And then we had a lot of discussion about how wide the lane should be. And someone says, oh, the Golden Gate Bridge lanes are 11 feet, but those are all going the same direction, mind you. And then we have a geometry issue. All these other issues came up. But I think where we left it was the intent just to align the right-of-way south of the bridge, north of the bridge, not necessarily wide, just not necessarily a choking point. But that's all intent. I think this is all. We're doing review of alternatives, it's coming up, and some other things. But I'm comfortable with the language suggestion. My other comment was for the citizens' language ballot measure. It seems that ballot measure says, hey, if you're going to do this work, ask the community, and basically, if you approve changing the bridge and the bridge has to be reconstructed and replaced, if that's our decision, that you do have a vote of the community, basically says that. My impression of the, I guess, should I call it the first one, option A, the first measure we're looking at, that is the one you suggested, Alan, for something to give us more flexibility. In my mind, that is the conclusion of that. It's saying we want they want to make it the official policy to go ahead and make these changes, the changes that are deemed necessary from this council. And so my opinion is if we're basically acknowledging the citizens' initiative, saying, yes, makes sense, let's do that, then let's just ask the citizens to make this our official policy. I don't see, I think we're just sort of acknowledging it and going to the logical end to put the ballot measure forward to align with the changes in the direction we've already set.
I'm confused. I mean, what I was suggesting was that the citizens' initiative, not ours, none of the wording be changed. We put it verbatim onto the ballot.
Okay, but I think, and I'm suggesting that so let's take this. So that goes on the ballot, it gets overwhelmingly approved, and then we have to then if we want to move forward with the bridge project, we have to then put it on the ballot. Yes. I think our option A just does that. It says, we acknowledge your initiative. You don't even need to put it on the ballot because we're going to put our project in front of the citizens and make that the policy of the community. It makes it unnecessary. You can still put it on the ballot, but I believe the first option that we're looking at acknowledges it and said, okay, and it's on the ballot, and now the citizens can have a vote to endorse that direction. You follow me?
No, are we talking about still putting both initiatives on the ballot?
So you can suggest that. I'm going to suggest that we don't need to do the citizens initiative because I think that the first initiative that we're proposing actually says we acknowledge it, say, fine, let's do that, let's ask the community, and in doing so, we put it on the ballot, and therefore it's doing essentially what the citizens initiative is asking us to do.
Councilman Patridge?
You lost me on that, because it's two different items, because ours is totally different from the citizens one. I think what Alan was talking about was leaving all the whereases in, correct?
Yeah.
Were you talking about the citizens one where we leave all the whereases in? Where
Yes.
They were, yes.
Yes.
So, okay, I am going to be a proponent for the pedestrians and bike. And right now, Alan, you're saying, okay, get on your bike and drive fast, and you can go over the thing. It's really, it's really a safety issue for me. It's not just adults going across that bridge, it's also young children that are going across that bridge. And so, you know, that was one of the reasons why we have the bike and pedestrians on Carrilla Highway, is because of safety. And so, I'm really concerned about of not having bike. I mean, we can eventually do that and stuff, but I just think that we need to be really cognizant of the fact of safety. That was one of the reasons about the bridge that I was concerned about, is the pedestrians and the bikes, because right now, they can't go across that bridge. People with special needs cannot go across that bridge. And we just cannot allow that to happen in this community. And so my concern is more about that everybody here has a quality of life that they can attain, and they're not going to be able to. So I'm concerned about the bike and pedestrian. I really am. That was the safety for me, and not the other part.
Councilman Fraser.
Well, there's been so much said about this, and especially over the last few months, you know, you kind of wonder who's telling the truth or what's the truth here. There's been so much misinformation about this, and I got to repeat it again. We did not wake up one morning and decide, let's just go fix a bridge. I mean, there's been data for the last years and years from Caltrans, this wasn't from us, saying that the bridge is getting obsolete, they're giving us a low rating, and it's not just us, it's happening across the country all over the place. And so we thought the responsible thing to do, as it's been ignored for quite some time, we better look into it. And this has been going on for a few years. And even if we start and everybody approves it right now, it's still going to take years and years, because there's so much permitting to be done. Many agencies involved. And that's another myth, that we were going to bypass all of those. We can't. You know we can't. There will be CEQA. There will be every agency involved, and I'm sure every agency will appeal one thing or another. So this is a very long process. But you've got to look at the reality of this. And I kind of have an issue of this even being on a ballot, because we are supposed to be policy. And you don't usually go out to voters and ask them, do you want your road paved? Do you want something safer in your neighborhood? You do that. What I wish this was about was, how is the design of it? And then you ask the community, do you want it to look just exactly as it is? Or do you want a tall superstructure? And again, another rumor going about, I think individually talking to us, and from the very beginning, we had said we want it to be the same old funky bridge with pillar boxes. Yet, the person who I talked to came back and says, I don't want stainless steel towers, I don't want to hear clickety-clack. I sure don't either. But the thing is, safety standards and functionality in 2014 is a whole lot different than it was in 1900. And it's infrastructure. And we've got to do something about it. And if I was a Main Street merchant real close to it, I would be very concerned too. There's no doubt this will interrupt our lives. There will be detours. And listening to people, they wanted one pass through, as long as you kept a lane open, that would be fine, as long as you did this. And then it came down to, well, no, it's historic and you preserve it. If you wanted true preservation, I'd be standing right in line with you. But true preservation would mean people, horses, wagons, no motorized cars. Because that bridge was only to last 50 years. Now, definitely, we got our money's worth out of it, because it's been 114 years. And we have cars going across that day and night, and have been for that extra 60-odd years beyond the 50-year life. The thing that was a straw for me that, like, okay, let's get this out, let's ask the public now, was we got some emails, or people had said in the last few weeks, you guys have changed your mind, when are you going to let us know? And there was a speaker here a few weeks ago that said he had information from Caltrans that we changed our mind, we weren't going to replace the bridge. So there's been all this misinformation out there. And that wasn't true. We hadn't changed our mind, because the last time we took a vote was in September. We couldn't go out and change our mind without doing it publicly. Yet we were accused of, we've changed our mind, and they heard about it, and they got a letter from Caltrans. Caltrans certainly didn't send a letter like that. And again, a lot of misinformation about this. So I think we need to put something on the ballot to get it over with. I still have an issue. I think it is our responsibility as a council and a city to make sure infrastructure is built correctly around this community. I almost don't think you ask the public to rebuild something like that, because this is what your responsibility is. Again, if it's a design element, I'd ask the community. So I have a hard time with this, because I think no matter what happens, the liability and the onus comes back to the city. Even if the community votes, don't touch it. But if something happens to the bridge, and we all know, we think we're all going to survive during an earthquake, we just don't know what will happen. But the reality is it's 114 years old, packed with steel, dirt, cement of that era. Things have been upgraded a whole lot since then. So I think we should just go with the ordinance that's here, the safety and accessibility, because this is what we're truly talking about, is the safety of crossing over that bridge now and for many years to come. That's how I feel about this, along with the bikes and pedestrians. I think we cannot exclude bikes. We're going around doing so much with trying to make the community more accessible to pedestrians and bike riders. We can't be doing it in patches this way. This is what we're hearing from the bike community. They want more connectivity around town. So we definitely have to include a safe passage for everyone of all capabilities going across that bridge.
Councilman Kowalczyk.
So, and just to highlight for Councilmember Alfano's benefit, that the language does state, I could go either way on that language for the regarding roadway width, but the language does say not limited to. So it's not restricting us. It's always going to come back to us. But I understand your point there, and I will not try again to explain what I did before, because that was my second attempt, and I definitely aligned with Councilmember Frazier on the Main Street Bridge Safety and Accessibility Act. I think that it is most consistent with the vote of the council, and approval of that would be a endorsement of the vote of the council. So I'm aligned with that, and I think okay, I won't try to over-explain it. I'll just leave it there.
Thank you for your comments. Some months ago, a comment was made that I don't think about this bridge. Trust me, I've been thinking about it for years. I've been really stressing about it the last couple of months, but just a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was, when staff and I met together, the three of us, a city attorney, and we just kind of started to review this ballot initiative that was being presented to us. And safety was our number one priority, and I know you don't want to hear it, but trust me, we just don't know. In a governing position, I have to govern for the unexpected, and I have to govern for the future. I cannot govern to the past. I want to keep the past, I want to save it, but you have to govern to the future when you're put in these positions. And it's tough decisions. But saying that, I want to be legally defensible too. I don't take this lightly with the threats. I don't govern on threats. I govern on facts. Show me the facts, show me the information, and the threats of lawsuits. Trust me, in municipal government in America, we live with these daily. So I think if my city attorney is telling me that I'm legally defensible on these issues, that gives me a lot of faith to continue to move forward. And when there was questioning about the June initiative, I need to know. I can't have many more months of continuing bickering and meanness and nastiness back and forth. I need to get the information to the public. The public has every right to make the right decision in their own personal vote. The citizens, the voting residents of Half Moon Bay have this authority. But I want them to know that between now and November, I've said this before, we have 64 environmental tasks. I apologize. We have 64 environmental tasks, 25 major initiatives to look at just for environmental reviews. So it's not something we take lightly. This is going to be months and months, and my hunch is environmental reviews will probably take till 2016. I'm speculating, and then if someone wants to sue us, it'll take years longer. The lawsuits will just continue to drain the staff and drain the resources of the city. But we have an obligation, my friends, to fix this bridge properly. I've met with political people all over the country in the last few months, and they continually would talk about infrastructure. And when you're talking about 65,000 bridges in America, failures, that's not to be taken lightly. And I probably will not be governing around by the time this bridge moves forward. But we do have to make tough decisions. So we're putting this decision to the voters of the city of Half Moon Bay. You're going to give me an up or down vote in June, and once I know that position, we will move forward. But if that bridge falls down, let's hope for the, of all hopes, that no disaster would occur. But if it falls down, we still have to do the environmental reviews. Is that correct, legal counsel?
That's right.
Yeah, so we have to make that decision. Do you want to stop all your environmental reviews, and then if a disaster happens, let's hope not, or Caltrans steps up and says, this bridge is no longer safe to pass over, then what are you going to come back to me and say, you guys didn't do anything? Well, let me tell you, we are doing something now, and we're going to the public. Let the citizens, the voters of Half Moon Bay, and I stress that, you have to be a resident of Half Moon Bay to vote on this. I was questioned by a outside the city limits resident the other day saying, well, why can't I vote on my bridge? I said, do you want me to vote on your issues in your community? Well, no. So I think the citizens of Half Moon Bay have to give us the direction. Once we have that direction in June, we will move forward, whatever that direction is, or we will just stop the process. And then let's hope nothing would ever happen to that bridge, or accident will happen. And I have to, again, continually disagree with respect to Councilman Alfano. If we're going to build a bridge, you got to have it built properly. You got to build it for the next 80, 100 years. And let me tell you, bicycles, electric cars, smaller vehicles, people with mobile devices that are ADA issued, they need to have that lane. And here we're working hard to get bicyclists off the sidewalks, and then you want to divert them back onto the street. I'm sorry, I cannot agree with you on that. But I think we're moving in the right direction. And, you know, we can be continually criticized. Local government is criticized daily. I accept that, but I have to govern to the future. I'm not going to govern to the past. So I would like to ask if we could bring this to closure and move on.
Just for clarification, because I've ridden the bike down Main Street. When you drive down Main Street, there's no bike lane. You're dotting in and out of parked cars. It's not very wide. So we're talking about a 100-foot bike lane surrounded by no bike lane. So I mean, that's the reality of the issue. If we can eventually get bike lanes everywhere, somehow widen Main Street, change the parking patterns, I'm all for it. we bike a lot, but I mean, just the reality is we'd only be providing a 100-foot bike lane if that's what we did. So with that, let me come up with a recommendation. We can vote this up or down, we can change it. Because the city attorney staff gave us two choices. I'm going to give you the first one, which would be, I would recommend we pass a resolution of the City Council, the City of Half Moon Bay, calling for a municipal election to be consolidated with the June 3rd, 2014 statewide election to submit to the voters a local ballot measure enacting the Main Street Bridge Safety and Accessibility Act as the official policy of the people of the City of Half Moon Bay, and number two, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Half Moon Bay calling for a municipal election to be consolidated with the June 3rd, 2014 statewide election to submit to the voters a local ballot measure entitled the Main Street Bridge Preservation Act, and amending Policy 7.8 Visual Resources of the Local Coastal Land Use Plan, and Section 18.39045 of the Implementation Plan, Title 18, to prohibit demolition or expansion of the Main Street Bridge without obtaining majority voter approval for such demolition or expansion at a subsequent election.
Discussion.
There's been a motion. We would need a second before discussion.
I would second it.
It's been seconded for discussion. So now, Councilmember Kowalczyk.
I request to amend the motion, and I'd like to separate them. So there's two items for the ballot. I request that we separate them into the two separate resolutions.
Sure. What the heck?
The seconder agree?
Absolutely.
And maker of the motion agrees.
Great.
So the understanding is, legal counsel, stick with me on this, would be two separate ballot initiatives.
There's a motion and a second to approve both resolutions. The recommendation, I believe, is to vote on the first resolution first, and then vote on the second resolution second. So I don't think you need to amend the motion or the second.
Okay, so there's no amendment needed.
You want to vote separately?
Yes,
I want to vote separately.
I'm going to vote twice.
Thank you.
I really like voting.
Again, just in discussion purposes here, Councilman Alfano, you know, the design has not been, we can't stress this enough, the design has not been made for this bridge. We are just doing the environmental reviews. We do not know what the environmental reviews will tell us, what kind of a bridge we can build there, if we can build anything. Simple as that. So it's not like we're building a 4-lane freeway over that bridge. But again, I want to just remind us, when you're dealing with federal funds and federal highway standards, which our president is pushing $300 billion for infrastructure in America, not only for the safety of the public, but also for putting people back to work. It does employ people that need to have employment, laborers, contractors, whatever, engineers. So I just want to stress that. So at this time, I'll call for the question as a roll call on the first motion, please.
And this is the Main Street Bridge Safety and Accessibility Act.
Thank you. Call for the roll call vote, please, Deputy City Clerk.
Councilmember Alfano?
Yes.
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 So ordered, yes. Now we would entertain a motion for...
Motion's been made and seconded, so all you really need to do is call for the vote at this time unless there's further discussion.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Just for clarification, this is the Main Street Bridge Preservation Act. Correct. Yeah.
No further discussion, then I will call for the roll call vote, please, Deputy City Clerk.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Vice Mayor Fraser?
Yes.
Mayor Mueller?
Yes, so ordered 4-1. So at this time, this concludes this agenda item, and I thank everyone for participating. And we will move on to the next agenda item, item number 11, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We will be discussing tonight a Coastside Emergency Operations Center. And for those of you familiar with construction projects, once something is actually built, it's not actually done yet. So that has been the experience here in Half Moon Bay. Several years ago, you authorized us to move forward with another grant-funded project to make sure that we have a safe community and a good place to operate when we have emergencies happening. And it took until June of last year to actually finish the building. And that primarily involved a lot of technology improvements. Since that time, we've had the opportunity to conduct a number of trainings and actual exercises with a whole variety of agencies. We have worked with the Fire District, we have worked with the Red Cross, we have worked with Animal Rescue, we have worked with the Harbor District, and primarily all of this work has been coordinated and conducted through the County Office of Emergency Services, for which we very much appreciate their support and assistance. And in that period of time, County Office of Emergency Services started some discussions about about where different operations are most suited to be operated from. We do not have one location on the coast side that is large enough to conduct all of the, I would ask the audience members who are having conversations to please leave the room. It is extremely distracting. Ms. Roberts?
Yes, please, could we have quiet in the room, please, if you would like to visit with the reporter outside? Thank you.
And so we had the opportunity to conduct all of those different trainings and exercises with all of those different agencies, and the discussions were started to determine where things could most strategically be located. In the course of those conversations, we wanted to formalize what the Fire District, the County Office of Emergency Services, the City of Half Moon Bay, and KEEP, which is the organization orchestrated through the Chamber, organizing businesses. All of those organizations are recommending that we officially designate the facility at 537 Kelly at the police station as the Coastside Emergency Operations Center. And there's many strategic advantages to this. There we would operate the management and logistics, command and control, the administration, public works, finance, and legal support sections of emergency services. And that is because everything there is needed and is fully functional for those functions. We have computer links, radios, internet, television, analog phones, the major communication towers there. Generator can operate for 72 hours without refueling, all of that kind of thing. The fire station, which we had currently been using as the Emergency Operations Center because it was the best facility available at the time, would continue to be a significant part of emergency operations, but that would primarily become the staging area for fire and police services and volunteers associated with those, because their facilities, sleeping areas, bathing areas, that kind of thing, are more suited to personnel that may have to serve shifts but may have to stay on site for multiple days at a time. It also would serve as an emergency backup, secondary backup system should something happen at the police station, and we couldn't, preventing us from operating out of there. So we are recommending that you adopt the resolution designating 537 Kelly as the Coastside Emergency Operations Center. And we have tonight, Michelle again is here. She has been tasked with doing a variety of emergency preparedness items and is really making great leaps with how our staff is trained and our personal readiness to make sure that we can respond to an emergency. And I'd also like to introduce Nick Gattuso, who is the Coastside District Coordinator for the County Office of Emergency Services, and he is here this evening and can answer any questions that you have too with this formal designation. So with that, all three of us are happy to answer questions and to be able to move forward on the item tonight.
May I ask Nick, please, to come up and say a couple words at the podium?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Ms. Snyderman, thank you for having me. As you know, you and the city and the county got together and created this position that I'm currently filling as the Coastside Coordinator for the Office of Emergency Services, which is a brand new position that's never been held before. I bring over 30 years of experience in emergency services, in dispatch and police. And I know an awful lot of people in the county in emergency services because I'm old and I've been doing it a long time. The function of my position is to serve the entire Coastside's emergency needs. So I'm working with the Pescadero Municipal Advisory Committee, help them set up a safety committee, which I'm currently chairing once a month. I've spoken before the Mid-Coast Community Council and made the offer to help them with the safety committee as well. I'm working with the airports, the harbor, the fire district, KEEP, Red Cross, all the same organizations. And as my job title signifies, what I'm supposed to be doing is coordinating the efforts of everybody on the coast side. I know there's some division right now between the different communities on the coast, but when an emergency happens, when a disaster strikes, we're all in this together. And my job is to help make certain that the efforts that are being done in the south part of the coast and the efforts that are being done in the north part of the coast, as well as in the city of Half Moon Bay, are coordinated so that we can all help each other when and if, God forbid, disaster does strike us. And I'd like to commend council and Ms. Snyderman for moving forward with the renaming of the Emergency Operations Center and of helping to fund this position that I'm currently filling. That's it in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about what I'm doing or what the Emergency Operations Center is intended for.
Thank you. I think I get you to push yours off quick here. You get a little feedback. Push your button, just a button. Very good. I thank you for that. I think you made an important point that this is for the entire coast side. And I almost relate it to our library. If you think about our entire coast side and our library, it's 150 square miles. It's not just Half Moon Bay. It's from Devil's Slide to Davenport to Skylonda to the top of 92. So we have to realize that we are providing a service. We have CAL FIRE in Pescadero. We have CAL FIRE in Skylonda. We have a La Honda volunteer with a chief up there that is an expert in the whole coast side, that we're very fortunate that he is chief of La Honda as a volunteer. And I think that's most important. I will say that I have talked to a number of people the last few days regarding this agenda item, and just shared with them my experience. You know, at the Water Board, we are policy, we're not operations, and I think it's most important that we share that with everyone, because if we have an oil spill in the bay, I'm not out there cleaning it up. We're out there in the policy division, and I think it's the same with this EOC center. We don't need people out there telling you how to do your job or how to fight a fire or how to prepare for disaster preparedness. You're the professional. We're the ones that have to give you the tools to do that. And this huge tool that, again, it's not about the two of us, but many of us. Maureen and I, many, many years ago, walked the halls of Congress and visited with Representative Eshoo and said, you know what, along with retired Sheriff Horsley, that this is something that's needed and is finally coming to their just due, that it's named for this. The cost of the sign is very minor for what could happen, the cost of human life. So thank you very much for that. So I don't have any further comments or questions. Marina, do you have a comment?
No, just nice that you stayed here this evening. Get a taste of the coast. And I am the Designate Director on OES, so I'll see you at the next meeting.
Yes, Councilman Alfano.
I know Michael Klass, Dr. Klass, put a lot of effort into arranging for doctors that live on the coast, nurses, other medical professionals to be trained and organized and prepared for emergencies. And I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I know he's kind of given up the ship and so forth. So my assumption is you're going to be able to step into whatever needs to happen. So if we're cut off from the other side of the hill and we've got doctors and nurses, we have medical supplies stocked, there's going to be some planning for that. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. And the situation with the Medical Reserve Corps and Dr. Klass is very sad, and it's something that we're taking very seriously. The announcement that he made at the KEEP meeting pointed a lot of fingers in a lot of directions as to what went wrong. But of course, what is our primary goal? I'll keep saying it, it's saving lives. We're working and talking to Dr. Klaas and other members of the MRC. If that situation cannot be salvaged in its current form, we are already working on a contingency plan to staff up and train some other medical personnel on a more regionalized basis on the coast side. I keep going back to that because this is all about interoperability and the sharing of resources between the various communities on the coast side from both ends. And so, you know, we have a lot of medical personnel that live on the coast, and we are already working on a plan if we cannot salvage the current MRC situation.
Thank you for your comments. Any further discussion? been long awaited for. Let's see if anyone would, Marina, would you like to make a motion?
Unless staff had something to add to this, you're good? All right, I will make a motion to adopt the resolution designating 537 Kelly Avenue, Half Moon Bay as the Coastside Emergency Operations Center.
Second.
And I would like to second it also.
Sorry, Mayor.
I have that privilege, right?
But I'm the oldest one.
You have seniority. I'm not saying the oldest, but the longest serving member, so.
Not the oldest, the smartest.
So, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Alfano.
Yes.
Councilmember Hafford.
Yes.
Councilmember Walker.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fraser.
Yes.
Mayor Muller.
Yes, thank you very much. One more item, so bear with us, folks, if you can, for one more item, and we'll see if this next presenter here...
We always save the best for the last.
I know, if he doesn't get called home in an emergency run.
So we do have one last item this evening. It's twice a year at a minimum. We come to you with report on your strategic plan and the progress that we are making, and an update also we've incorporated into the matrix planning report into this report. So we have two presenters for this evening, I believe. One is Deputy City Manager Alex Kajikian, and we also will be having our Community Development Director Dante Hall presenting on the planning portion.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Alex Kojikian, Deputy City Manager. The item before you this evening is the strategic plan update and a matrix planning update as well. The strategic plan was adopted back on March 18, 2013 at a special meeting. There were 18 priority projects that were prioritized from low, medium to high. All the projects are on track and there are no staff requested changes at this time. If you look at the PowerPoint before you, there's the list of the 18 projects and the coinciding years or fiscal years that they will be handled in. Some of the highlights for the projects include the library project, which we held a special meeting on February 12th, and we got council direction to work with county library staff to update the 2004 library plans and to seek a financial advisor to go ahead and help us with funding scenarios as well on that project. The next item on the highlights is the general plan. There was so on December 17th, the City Council went ahead and appointed General Plan Advisory Committee members. On January 30th, the GPAC held its first General Plan Advisory Committee meeting. There's going to be surveys that are going to be hitting every residential address here in the city within the next 2 weeks. And we're also going to start work on the housing element as well. So we're off and running. Another exciting point is that the city was able to get $145,000 of grant funds to pay for the LCP update. So we're coming a long way with the general plan, and so we're moving forward, and this upcoming calendar year we're going to get a lot of work done, so it's exciting times here. The next item was a promote tourism plan. This goes back to Measure J funding with the Economic Development Action Plan that this council adopted back on December 3rd. With that, the $225,000 that the city budgeted for the chamber has hired part-time staff at 20 hours a week to go ahead and promote midweek stays and visits and also attract corporate conferences to the coast side, so we're working on that as well. The other item to highlight is Measure J and its implementation. We were able to repave $500,000 worth of streets this past fall. We were able to go ahead and complete the Economic Development Action Plan, and we're working with that part-time staff to go ahead and attract businesses in the midweek. And then also the library, we're also using that money to help us pay for, with the county's help, the update process that's coming before you. So that kind of covers my area of the strategic plan. Now we have the matrix planning progress, and I'm going to invite Dante up here to go ahead and present to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, and good job getting those grants to help us move forward.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council.
And welcome to you, your first one here tonight.
Thank you very much.
We look forward to many, many more.
Absolutely. So over the last, this is my second week here, and over the last week and this week, I've been meeting with a lot of you, meeting with the community and a lot of the stakeholders, really getting my hands around and up to speed on the important issues and the issue and projects in the community. And one of the responsibilities I have is to monitor this planning matrix report. So I want to give you a brief update of what's happened since your September report. A lot of the work has been done by the M Group, and they've done a great job for the city. And so we've worked to fully transition the M Group into the city. And that's really provided a lot of staff continuity that probably wasn't there before on land use issues, and help people come in and be shepherded through the process. I'm really big on making things simple, using common sense. And a lot of the things that have been implemented by the M Group make a lot of sense. With the help of Bruce Ambo and his staff, they've been able to complete 80% of the items that are actually on the matrix, and they were able to complete a lot of the things that were even beyond the scope that really improved the efficiency and the customer service for the city. One of the things that they've done is double the counter hours. I think as the city was forced to cut down back on staff, we were forced to cut back on planning hours. We've been able to restore that to the community and be a little bit more user-friendly. We've also, with the help of the M Group, really reduced the plan check times by introducing a lot of things and a lot of forms to make it simple. One of the things we've done is, we have a manual, and it's a planning manual, operations manual that we use, no matter whether it's a consultant, no matter whether it's city staff. It's a training tool that actually tells you exactly what to do. It walks you through step by step. But in addition to that, we've revamped the application process, the application checklist, and many of the forms and different handouts for the community. Like I said, I'm really big on simplicity. So what the M Group has done for the city are things like this handout with graphics, just a one page on the standards for residential building. And what this essentially does is it condenses pages and pages of code into one simple form that you can hand out and work with the community on. In addition, we've done some guidelines for the signage of downtown and improve the zoning map tool. In the next 3 to 6 months, I fully expect that we'll be able to complete all the recommendations from the M Group. With the exception, in the matrix report, with the exception of the updating the zoning code. As you know, we're going through a general plan process, and the zoning code will be amended after that. And also automating the permit system. It's going to take some time to really figure that out, look at the system that will best fit our city's functions. And also we will be making our website a little bit more friendly, customer friendly, and make sure that people can navigate through the system. And I think that's it. If there are any questions, I'm here. Members, Bruce Ambo from the M Group is here, but that completes my presentation. And I'll answer any questions if any.
Thank you. Comments? Questions?
Yes, through the mayor. I know there was a lot of concern, and I'll use a nice word, that the city was going to be outsourcing everything under the sun. And I think the reality is, two things strike me. One, when I walk into City Hall, I see the same faces day in and day out. Somebody may not be a city employee, but it's the same person there day after day, month after month. They understand our ordinances and our codes, and they had to deal with our customers. And the second thing is, all I keep hearing when I just listening to you and talking with Bruce in the past are all the improvements that have been made in terms of building and planning. And I think that was our big concern. I think we were willing to put time, money, effort into this area because we used to hear a lot of complaints about that. And I'm very pleased, the counter hours, the one-page reviews you've got and so forth. The only question I would have is, the one thing I loved from the M Group's recommendation was a concierge concept where I come in to build an addition to my house, I meet Fred, and he's my contact. So if I have a question, I don't go to 5 different people. Fred takes care of what my need. Is that happening?
Okay. Yes, when a person comes in with an application, there's one planner that's assigned to them, and they shepherd them through the process.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, is that planner named Fred?
It's called Bruce.
Councilmember Patich, quickly. Oh, I'm not supposed to use that word.
Thank you, John.
Take your time, Naomi.
I am going to take my time. I just want to say that I agree with Councilman Alfano. What a great improvement in the planning and building. We are not getting the calls that we used to, and I really appreciate all the work, Bruce, that your group has done, and Dante, you have a great staff, so I'm looking forward to all the great improvements that you've done, and I think people are happy when they go to the city and they know that, one person is going to be helping them, and I have not gotten any calls. So, Bruce, you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Frazier.
And I have to add to that, really in the last 6 months or so, we have not gotten those calls. And I know there's been businesses that have opened on Main Street, businesses in different areas, and construction going on, and we're not getting those calls. Just those really pleading calls. I thought I had everything, someone told me. And so I think with updating the worksheets and a lot of the procedures, and then certainly having a client manager or concierge to help guide people through this, saves them time, but it also saves staff time too. So great job, keep up.
Councilmember Kowalczyk.
Through the mayor, I would like to make a comment. So I think that one thing that's really great is the energy when you go in City Hall. I think it's a testament to all the positive work that's happening, and a testament to the fine work that our city manager has done to get us to this point, and I want that to go acknowledged and on the record. And I didn't say that quickly at all. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're just looking for an acceptance of this report. Is that correct? So there's no action needed other than the acceptance. So I think you've got the feel here, every one of you in this room, how much we appreciate the hard work you're all putting. You're new to the position. You stepped in tonight as a deputy city clerk. We thank you. We're grateful that we have you here. And so our city staff has absolutely done a wonderful job and working hard, and we're trying to make the right decisions. And again, we can't thank you all enough. We're going to have some changes coming up, but we're going to get through it, all of us. So we'll deal with that as time comes along. But before I adjourn the meeting in memory of our two longtime residents and leaders in their fields, I have to say in 2009, went through quite a bit with the judgment of the Beechwood Yamagiwa property, and at that time I was the vice mayor, and our mayor in 2008 or so was Miss Bonnie out there. And so thank you and Dale for coming today. And I've always said it, probably about the the best thing that ever came out of that lawsuit was the two of you met, so. So that was special. So thank you guys for being here tonight, former Mayor Bonnie. And at this time, we'll have a quick moment of silence and adjourn in memory of Chief Larry Santoni and Kenny Armandi. So ordered, thank you.
Great meeting, John.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to the outer limits.